Well, Bob Pennal, welcome to New Zealand. Nice to have you here.
For the second time?
For the second time.
Now I get to see the North Island.
Okay, it's South Island last time.
Oh, yeah, that South Island was beautiful.
Okay, Bob, tell us a bit about yourself, because many New Zealanders won't be aware of who you are and what you've done.
I've been in law enforcement. Really, I'm still in law enforcement. I'm a law enforcement coordinator now, but from 1987 to 2009, I was with the California Department of Justice, the Bureau of Narcotic Enforcement. So I was a state narcotic agent, and I was assigned to a team that raided crystal meth labs. So from 1987 to 2009, I raided about every crystal meth lab that we had in the Central Valley of California. And we were really hit hard there because of our agricultural area.
Right.
So I literally had the front seat to the whole methamphetamine problem. You know, I was there when we started with outlaw motorcycle clubs like here that you have, headhunters, you know, and the Mogul mob and everything. I saw all of that, but then I saw when the Mexican traffickers transitioned in about 1989. And it's literally, the last time I was there, I was talking about how they're going to eventually attack your market. And that was around 2016. And that's exactly what happened. Yeah. And as I continue to read intelligence, well, if you look at your seizures just in the months of March and April, you can see once they established smuggling routes here, and they were coming here. And that's what I did. So I became this crystal meth guy, fentanyl, nitazine guy. So I had the opportunity to speak pretty much internationally, domestically. And I've been very, very blessed. So very blessed to be invited here to speak.
What is so attractive about New Zealand? Because, I mean, we're sort of down the bottom of the world. We're isolated. You know how long it took to fly here. Why is New Zealand seen as an attractive destination for drug cartels?
Unbelievable profit margin. It's unbelievable. They will tell you. It's interesting. I show a video from within a Mexican cartel lab in Mexico, and the Mexican lab cookers tell you, the interviewer, that, hey, listen, this is all going to New Zealand because we get 10 times the price in New Zealand than we do in America. So we don't make a lot of money in America, but we make a lot of money in New Zealand. And that's why we're heading to New Zealand, because, you know, it's all about money.
Well, why are New Zealanders willing to pay that price, do you think?
Well, I'll tell you where the price will start driving down. Well, you've been paying that price for a long time for a lot of stuff. You know, originally out of Asia, you know, Myanmar, Burma, you know, yaba, you know, crazy medicine pills, crystal, that all used to come in to your area. And then when the Mexican traffickers got involved, now these are the same Mexican traffickers that are also in South Africa, that are also in Spain, and they're also setting up large labs in Canada, which also comes, you know, to your country. They were just attracted to it. But eventually you're going to saturate to the point where I really believe your prices will start coming down because you're just going to have so much here. And you already see your prices starting to come down.
And that's bad.
That's real bad. That just shows you how much. The biggest problem that I saw in my whole career is just the impact on your communities.
Yeah.
Very few drugs cause your spouse and your children to become your worst enemies. Because when you deal with meth psychosis and meth abuse like that, you don't see people for who they are. I mean, you could be a police officer and walk to the door, and someone who's really, really in meth psychosis, they don't see you as a policeman. They don't see your uniform. They don't see their kids for what they are. And that's why the violence is just incredible that goes with this drug. When I've researched your country, I've watched it for a long time. You can just see what it's doing to everybody here and everything, and the families and everything. It's just terrible. And the bad part was it's just gotten worse since I was here last time. And now look at, like you said today, the seizure today.
Well, there's a story just breaking that Customs has seized a combined total of more than 90 kilograms of methamphetamine. 90 kilograms of methamphetamine, how much damage does that do?
That does a lot of damage. Here's the big problem when you see that right there. Just like with our border. So we share a southern border with them, so they smuggle across into the United States. So what happens is they will use commercial vehicles, trucks, and they'll use load cars, but they'll send 10. And if 2 get taken off, the other 8 made it. Same here, you took that off today, but maybe the other 5 loads all got through into your country. Because they saturate. That's a very big thing with them. One of the things that they said is that originally, you know, they sent like 1,000-ton shipment here, and your customs people, which by the way are pretty darn good. I've watched a lot of stuff on your country. You guys do great work. They immediately intercepted that. They were able to find it. Yeah. So now the Mexican trafficker said, we're going to do smaller loads like that load right there. So we'll just saturate you with 10 small loads rather than 1 big load and risk you taking that off. And that's exactly what happens. And the biggest thing is the longer they're here, the more they're going to start establishing all their roots and start establishing themselves. In your law enforcement, believe me, they'll adapt to that. believe me, they're going to be confronted by your New Zealand police, because you guys will figure that out, and you got a great agency. So, but they're ready to take those losses. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In other words, they saturate you with so much that you can rate us and hit us and take it, but we're making so much money.
And is it always going to be the gangs that are doing this, or behind all of this?
Well, for us, it traditionally started out with outlaw biker gangs. And then we did a couple real significant investigations in the late 1980s, around 1986, that really impacted them. We took off one of their meth manufacturers, a guy named Kenny Owens, and we sent him to prison for 41 years. But they started realizing that the penalties for manufacturing were so high that we are better off just to buy meth from Mexican traffickers.
Right.
In other words, we don't need to be in the manufacturing business. Right. And that's when our bikers started buying from Mexican traffickers. And it appears a lot of your distributors, they're going to be buying from Mexican traffickers.
Excuse my ignorance on this with meth, but with cannabis, obviously, we're not dealing with your parents' pot or your Woodstock weed anymore. The potency of cannabis has increased through the way they're manufacturing it. Has the potency of meth changed in any way? Has it got more lethal?
Here was the biggest thing that happens. When they started manufacturing originally outlaw bikers and all of them, they made a methamphetamine out of what was called P2P, phenyl-2-propanone, and it made what was called DL meth. So D is the most potent. So that's 50% good. And the L, levo isomer, is bad. They didn't even use that. And that's how they manufactured. When the Mexican traffickers came in for you guys, it would be pseudoephedrine and ephedrine, the decongestant, they transitioned over to that precursor chemical. And remember, a precursor becomes the drug. Right. That's the chemical they have to have. And when they did that and they switched to ephedrine and pseudoephedrine, the methamphetamine became twice as powerful because it went from 50% D and 50% L. So the D was it went to 100% D with pseudoephedrine. So the potency became twice as powerful.
And when did that happen about?
Transitioned, 1989 was when we took out the first big Mexican traffic with ephedrine and pseudoephedrine. So our country went to work, and it took us till 2005 to finally control the chemicals. And see, that's a big thing, controlling chemicals to manufacture. So we finally controlled pseudoephedrine and ephedrine, and we turned around and we drove the labs back down into Mexico. And the traffickers couldn't get pseudoephedrine and ephedrine. So what did they do? They turned around and they went back to making it the old way with P2P, the same way Walter White from Breaking Bad, if you've seen that show. And that's what they did. But what happened when they went to that recipe again, 50% good, 50% bad, they learned a way to enrich it. They used different chemicals like tartaric acid, and they learned to start washing away the L and increasing the D. So the 50% good and 50% bad went 70% good, 30% bad, 80% good, and the methamphetamine purity climbed again. And almost all the meth that we were seeing coming into the United States, it was very, very pure, very pure. It used to be that they used to cut it. They used to cut it with MSM, which was a sulfur supplement for horses. They used to dilute it and cut it, but they stopped cutting it. They had so much meth, they didn't have to cut it anymore.
So what would we be getting into New Zealand? Would it be 100% or would it be the 80?
You want to be 100%, but the meth that has been out there has been, in the 80s and 90s. But it just depends, because the last couple of ICE recovery labs, for us in the United States, and you're going to have it here, I guarantee you, this is going to happen to you, is that they smuggle in solution. They dissolve it into a liquid. That way, x-ray machines at the border can't pick them up. Customs can't pick that solution up. Everything from bottles of tequila to diesel fuel, like truck tractors. We'll have trucks come into the United States, and they're bifurcated fuel tanks. So half of the tank is diesel fuel with methamphetamine in it. And then when they get it here, they're going to recover it. And that's what will happen. They will smuggle here in solution, and then one day you're going to turn around and get a laboratory here where they're converting it back to crystal. See, it starts as a crystal, they smuggle it in liquid, then they convert it to crystal again. And that's what you're going to get here. And when they were doing that, they just didn't cut the methamphetamine. But the last few labs we've had, suddenly we have MSM again, the sulfur supplement. That's what they used to cut with. We hadn't seen that in a lot of years. So that may be local distributors. They get it from Mexico and it's very pure, but they turn around, they want to cut it 3 times or whatever, and now they're using MSM. You'll see when you're doing your quantitatives and everything, you will see what it's being made of.
Can you just bring it to a personal level for families that are watching this interview? I mean, it still amazes me that someone can just dabble with meth and just like that, they're addicted, they're willing to sacrifice everything, they're willing to spend all their money, they're willing to put their family at risk. It is that addictive?
Oh, absolutely. There's never been really a more dangerous drug in the world. You know, everybody right now, especially in the United States, you hear about all the fentanyl overdoses.
Yeah.
Well, nitazene now is what you really need to worry about. And you look at Australia, you have nitazene here, which is more powerful than fentanyl. But with methamphetamine, our overdose rates are extremely high with meth. Because with fentanyl, you know, you have reversal drugs like Narcan, naloxone. We don't have that with meth. But the big thing with meth is it's a very powerful central nervous system stimulant. And when people turn around, and especially when you're smoking, in the beginning, you used to inject it. You used to slam it. But now, it's the same way cocaine turned to crack so you could smoke it. Methamphetamine turns to ice so you can smoke it in a pipe. 15 seconds, that's in your body. And it becomes highly addictive. And so people get addicted very easily on it. And it amazed me in my career how people would do anything for that drug. And that's how people would turn around and, of course, they have to commit crimes there because they have to support their habits. And then they would turn around and prostitute themselves on the streets. I remember one time we bought a car for $75, a Toyota, because the person needed it so bad. They gave us their car undercover. They'll do anything to get to, and that's a very dangerous drug to get addicted on. One thing about opiates, okay, addicts take opiates because they don't want to get dope sick.
Yeah.
That's what happens. You are taking your opiate and everything, you start getting dope sick. That's why heroin addicts back in the day, 3 to 4 times a day had to, but methamphetamine and meth psychosis changes things. You become very, very violent. And then you turn around and you go on binges and you may not sleep 3-4 days if you're what's referred to as spun out. So where heroin addicts and fentanyl addicts are stealing everything, because they want to turn around and basically keep from getting sick. Meth addicts, not only are they using meth, but they're just all spun out.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting is that for us, a lot of our opiate addicts, they are hooked on fentanyl, but yet they still want to get high. So they take fentanyl to keep from getting sick, but they take crystal meth, they poly drug use because they want to get high. You're absolutely right.
Right. Okay. And I mean, for someone who is trying to get off meth, I mean, is there such a thing as an ex-meth addict? Is that possible, and how long does that take?
Oh, no, it's possible. I had a program called The Parents We Need to Talk, and I needed to talk to parents about their kids. One of the first things you see is that, first of all, just like cannabis, the denial. Well, listen, and I smoked cannabis when I was a kid. You were smoking nothing compared to what your children are smoking now, right? It's the same thing. You turn around and methamphetamine addiction, a lot of our insurance programs, in the States are 30 days for treatments. Well, you go into a 30-day treatment program, the first 2 weeks, you're detoxing. I mean, you got to detox first, and then you have 2 more weeks. And a lot of people have trouble getting that treatment and to follow up. And one of the number one things I've seen in my life is that if you're the people that have the best success is when you turn around and you take those kids and you take them to another state and you send them off in a program. We have a program called the Delancey House in San Francisco, places like that, where you literally are housed there, but you work in a restaurant and programs like that. You have to take your kids away from where they use. Because what happens is as soon as they get back from rehab and they smell certain smells, they hear certain noises, it triggers. And they're back to abuse again. You literally have to ship those kids off and send them somewhere, where they're in treatment every day, where they turn around and they have to get off. It's a very hard drug to get off of.
It's interesting you mentioned cannabis because, one of the, I guess I want to ask you, a lot of people say that cannabis is a gateway to meth, but how much of it is a gateway to meth and how many people just start on meth, just start on the strong stuff, don't even use a lot of stuff?
I'll tell you what we're seeing now. Let me give you the chain now. Young kids, energy drinks. Hitting energy drinks when you're an 8th grader, 7th grader. I remember one day I'm going to work and I stopped at this convenience store. I'm going to get a cup of coffee. My caffeine, which is nothing compared to this woman that was there with her kids. And her kid looked like he was like 12 and she's buying a Monster energy drink. Nothing against Monster. They make great energy drinks. But you're giving your kid that much caffeine at 7 in the morning? And then what happens is just lots of these kids will turn around and then they'll have another one in the middle of the day. So that creates anxiety. They get anxiety at a very young age. Then what happens is they start to transition into school. Then they get into vaping. And they get into vaping.
What are they vaping? Cannabis?
Well, cannabis.
Yeah,
okay. And that starts turning around and creating more anxiety. You know, when you have excessive cannabis use, you get anxiety. You have energy drink, cannabis, and then what happens is they can't sleep. So what happens if you ever go into their Snapchats or you ever go to TikTok and see when they're posting videos? Your kids are posting videos at 3 a.m. because they can't sleep. Now they're talking to their friends, their friends that are physicians and pharmacists, and their friends. Hey, you need to take one of these Xanaxes, one of these Xanny pills, and break it in half because you haven't used very much. To break it in half, it'll let you sleep because you have so much anxiety. Started with energy drink, started with it, and then what happens is there's fentanyl in that Xanny bar. It's a counterfeit pill, and then these kids turn around. They don't sleep at night or whatever. School, tons of pressure on them, anxiety.
Yeah.
That's how they get led into fields that have fentanyl in them and everything. And that's what happens to them.
So you said you developed a program for parents. We need to talk.
I created a program and I've spoken to a couple of churches and everything. One of the problems I ran into is that I still work full time.
Yeah.
And there was just so many people that wanted me to come by and speak.
Yeah,
and I didn't have the time. I still speak at a lot of conferences and everything, but it's funny. It's my 40th year of teaching because I'm that old, Bob. So this is my
club.
This is my 40th year. And I think I already pulled a muscle just talking to you. I can feel it. But 40 years of doing this, and every time I turn around and I think I'm not going to do it anymore, someone calls me or I get invited, and I just do it again. And one thing's important when you teach it, programs like this for TDDA and everything, is that you have to make sure you're very up to date as to, hey, you know what? This is what happened last Thursday, and see, that's the type of information we pass on here. Hey, listen, this is just what we see. And in my business, because I'm still within law enforcement. I read a lot of intelligence. I read a lot of reports out of Mexico. I have a very, very good idea what's going on because...
Does it worry you?
I'm reading it. Oh, worries the heck out of me.
Should it worry New Zealanders?
Oh, well, I'll tell you what, this, synthetic opiates and nitazine now, and you look at Europe, you look at Australia.
Yeah.
Look at Australia. There's 60 minutes to this segment, on nitazines. And, they had to stop a big rave dance festival because everybody was ingesting nitazine pills they thought were ecstasy, and they were having overdoses. So there's a lot of that. But here's something that really worries me. They just took off a huge, huge lab in Canada, big lab in Canada. Mexican drug cartel was involved in it. Okay. But there was sophisticated equipment there that they identify that the experts say that equipment right there is because they are trying to create other drugs that we've never heard of before.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. The minute you have one drug and it's been around, like everything has xylazine in it, which is used by veterinarians as an anesthetic. Everything has xylazine in it. All the pills have xylazine in it and everything like that. Now we turn around and we have addicts up in Seattle using xylazine alone by itself as a standalone drug. But now we have methamphetamine that's taking the place of xylazine because it's more powerful. They keep finding more and more drugs. And that's what happens.
And I mean, one of those other stories here, synthetic opioid 40 times more potent than fentanyl detected in New Zealand.
That's nitazine we were just talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the problem you have with that is that when you use a reversal drug, like you use Narcan, 4 milligrams, it may take 2 Narcans to bring you back from fentanyl, 8 milligrams. But you're finding with nitazines that's very powerful like that, it may take a lot more reversal drug. But the issues they're having in Europe are incredible. I mean, incredible with nitazine now.
Right. And I mean, you talked about the reversal drug to undo the effect. The session that I was just listening to, they were saying, well, the problem is that you need a buddy with you to administer that because it's unlikely when you're under the influence that you're going to administer that reversal.
If you suddenly, all of a sudden, go and faint, it's hard for you to take something out of a package and administer it yourself. This is what happens. These are the things that bother the heck out of me. So I'm talking to a bunch of parents one time, talking to these kids, and they literally, I couldn't even believe this. This will shock you, but these kids have parties, and they were turning around, and they had Narcan, and they were taking, everybody sees the blue M30 mini pills. Okay, that's one of those popular ways, and they smoke them. But they were trying to take themselves to the white light, and then their friends would immediately Narcan them to bring them back.
Wow.
I go, you kids are trying to basically overdose yourself to see the white light, and your friends bring you back. Yeah.
The
Are you
shock
guys
is,
out of your minds? Because then what happens is, the minute you think you have fentanyl, you don't. You have nitazene, or you have it mixed with something, and you're not taking what you think you're taking. And that's when the life gets sucked right out of you.
so one of the solutions that legislators in New Zealand have come up with, and groups that are kind of harm minimisation towards drugs, we call the Drug Foundation in New Zealand, their argument is we just need to test drugs and prove that it's pure what you're taking. That's the argument. Have you heard that argument? And is it a good argument?
Oh, yeah, I always hear that. Okay. Listen, back in Europe, way back in the day, they tried legalizing heroin and wanted to see how it worked. And what ended up happening? Heroin market increased, addicts increased. They started arriving in countries because the heroin was legalized. It's like the legalization part, okay? This afternoon, you're going to have Ray Padilla and them. They're great speakers. Talk about Colorado and what happened when they legalized marijuana. And I read a great article about that, and it was Colorado buyer's remorse about how
I've read that. It's a very good article.
Oh, we wish we never went down this road.
Yeah.
That's the problem, see. So you're going to turn around and you're going to, like you'll see test kits where you could turn around and test your drugs before you take it. You'll even see groups at concerts that will test your drugs for you and everything.
Yeah, we got that in New Zealand.
The problem is the equipment they're using is not as sophisticated, but you got to remember, fentanyl can be cut 100 to 1. So if you test something and maybe you pick up caffeine, you pick up acetaminophen, and you miss the fentanyl, you miss the nitazene part on the test. Or maybe it was mixed with some MDMA, ecstasy, because that's what they want, a lot of these parties, ecstasy. But you miss the fentanyl.
But what about the argument that it's better to have pure ecstasy than some drug that's got a whole lot of other components in it? So we'll test it to make sure that it's pure ecstasy.
Yeah, really.
Is that a good argument?
Keep them all safe. Have you ever seen what happens when these people get addicted and they turn around and they become drug addicts? Because you're promoting drug abuse.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, we know you're going to use drugs, so we're just going to make it safe for you to use drugs. But look at crystal meth, how we start our conversation. Look at what it's socially and what it has done to the people. Listen to all the interviews I see on your New Zealand television where people are telling you, this is what it did to my... So you want to encourage that? We're going to just make sure that nothing's bad in it, but keep using. Eventually that builds and it's going to catch up with you. It just catches up with you. When I was growing up, there was a lot of kids that they didn't use drugs because they were illegal. They wanted to, but they were scared to death. My dad was in the military. I was just scared to death to ever do anything like that. I didn't smoke. I didn't do anything like that. And we've reached a point now where you're at a generation now where the parents are social drug users and everything. I think the most important thing everybody needs to understand this, is that these aren't the same drugs. You look at a lot of people in the legislature, a lot more older now. It's nothing like they ever were surrounded with and everything. And every day they're creating an analog, something new of something. And by turning around and saying, well, we just want to, how about you fall back with educating those kids? We're seeing a big reduction in Fresno, California in our overdose deaths and everything because our district attorney, Lisa Smitkamp, went out and she created a program where they're talking to all of these kids. And we've seen a dramatic decrease in overdose among children.
And what are they saying to the kids?
Oh, they're just telling them about...
Don't do drugs?
Well, yeah, they're saying, you can't risk your life taking pills and doing fentanyl, wanting to go to the white light.
Yeah.
Because you're going to go to the white light if you aren't careful. Because here's the biggest thing I find. Most parents, a lot of people are just misinformed with what's really out there. And, you can read a lot of stuff on the internet and everything, and you can get into different sites. I go to a lot of sites where users talk among themselves. If you're using a certain drug and you're having and you want to use something else, you go and they have a chat board and they talk about it. Man, I go in there deep under. They have no idea it's me. And I read their stuff all the time. Yeah. No, listen, Wendy, you're a little small for this. You want to make sure you use... I'm just reading all this, and it's like...
So they're self-prescribing.
Oh, gosh, yeah. And I just think that's the big thing. I think the other thing that I've seen my whole life, here it is. You think this will never happen to you. You truly believe. So one of my friends is a doctor. He's a great guy. His son overdosed and died in his bedroom. And one of the most devastating things was, I'm a physician. I mean, I deal with this. And I just wasn't looking, and I didn't see the signs and symptoms of my own son. And everybody talks about this. You're trying to pass this bill. Hey, we're trying to get this through till your daughter dies. Suddenly it becomes real serious to you when all of a sudden you get a call and they find your daughter or your son in a car dead. And all of a sudden you realize this really, really happens, but now it has impacted your life.
Yeah.
And that's why you see the biggest advocates of people that have lost children and everything.
Yeah.
And it's like they're trying to tell people, listen to what I'm telling you. It is going to rip your heart out when you find your freaking little baby dead, when you find your daughter dead, or you find your son dead. It's going to rip. And I'm trying to tell you, it's happened to me, and you can't do this. You can't try to legalize or make it safer for everyone. You got to just stop drug use and educate them all and tell them. And you know, one of the big things that we've had in our country is that we've had a lot of rehabilitation programs. Well, why don't we turn around and rather than send people to jail and punish them, we put them in, make them go to rehabilitation?
Yeah.
We've passed multiple laws, right? Nobody wants to go. So they don't show up. They just don't go. Hey, you go into jail, you cited out everything like that, you're going to get into this treatment program.
So you try the health approach, but they don't want it because they're addicted. Yeah.
Because, you know, they're they're addicted. Like you said, get addicted to methamphetamine.
Yeah. So
they just don't want to go into a program. We offer everything. Hey, we're offering this. One of the biggest things with a lot of the non-housed that we have, you know, we have built apartments and for them to live. And the big thing is, you know, you got to be drug-free and everything like that. And they have someone on site, you know, they test you and everything. If we're going to give you this free house and everything like that, but people walk in, they don't want it. Why? Because they have to be drug tested. It's a terrible, terrible world, you know.
Well, just finally, I don't know if you've heard of the vernacular. We call ourselves Kiwis. What's your message to Kiwi parents about this whole challenge? I mean, parents are concerned. They've probably listened to what you've said, and they're freaking out right now. Maybe. What's your message to them in terms of encouragement? How do they protect their kids?
First of all, be involved in your kid's life. One of the biggest problems I see is that we've reached a point, like I can tell you for me in California, everything costs so much money. Both parents have to work. They just do. When I grew up, my mom was at home, but you have to work. So now there's a lot of free time.
Yeah.
And you're so easily influenced by your friends, by social media and the internet, but you're not watching your kids. You're not seeing who their friends are. You're not, all of a sudden you turn around and when's the last time, I'm not recommending dirty searching your kid's room, but when's the last time you're up, clean around and looked around and see what your kids are writing down, what they're drawing, who their friends are and everything. You know, in other words, you have to start paying attention because a lot of those signals are in front of you. Like my friend, a physician, a doctor, his son dies because he didn't see right in front of him that he had a patient, his own son, that's addicted to drugs. So as a parent, you just start watching your kids.
Yeah.
You start seeing who do they run with? Who do they hang out with? You know, here's the number one thing. Odd hours. Why are your kids awake at 3 a.m? Why aren't they eating when they should be eating, but they're eating at different times? Because, you know, you have an anatomical time clock too. And what happens is these kids get completely out of whack. Now they turn around, they're not sleeping when they should be sleeping. They're eating when they shouldn't be eating. Everything is out of whack. You start noticing that with your child. And of course, that personality change, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to take it from teens anyway. Ooh. But I'll tell you what, there's time where they're snapping. You can see their personality is changing. That is that anxiety thing I told you. Watch those kids and everything. And then talk to them. Go, hey, listen, we got to sit down and talk about, you know, these new drugs that are coming into New Zealand. I go, you know, they're taking a lot of lives and they're very dangerous. And you got to remember, you're all being taken advantage of by the drug cartel.
Yep.
And you're taking cartels in Asia. It's all about money. They don't care about your kids or anything. It's just about money.
Yeah.
And they're coming in and they're taking your children away from you. They're killing you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, I know you've said you've been at it 40 years. I'd like you to keep at it because we need your voice because it comes against the insanity that sometimes the messaging is. So, hope you really enjoy your time in New Zealand. And
I've been to both Australia and New Zealand, and I love it over here.
And you prefer New Zealand.
People.
Yeah, good.
Everybody prefers New Zealand.
And we'll get you down to Hobbiton as well.
You bet.
Hey, Bob, nice to meet you.
Pleasure.